Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I've got a special guest today, TD with the Texas boys. He's actually my neighbor. I live really close to Texas, and we just resonated as soon as we met.
Yeah.
He's got a channel, like I said, it's called the Texas Boys. I'll put it in the comments, I'll pin it in the description, or let's see, pin it in the comments and put it in the description. But how are you doing, TD?
Great, Chris. How you doing today, man?
We're doing good. We're wide open here at Taylor Welding. It's
Yeah,
things are really getting busy.
that is
And
great.
at the same time, we've got banks absolutely failing. You know,
Mm.
it's easy to get sidetracked. I was doing all this, and my people are calling me saying, "Hey, man, this is a big deal," and it really is. Um, check this out. I want to get your thoughts on it because you've got a financial
All right.
background pretty thick.
Yes, sir.
So this is the second biggest bank failure. This is a it's pretty nutty. Um, the largest bank failure was Washington Mutual.
Yeah.
But this is the second. And you remember, do you remember Washington Mutual?
Yeah, that was in '08, right?
Yeah,
That
you're
was
right.
the mortgage-backed security deal. Yep, yep.
All right. Well, today, the CVB, the Central Valley Bank, with $209 billion in deposits. This is a savings and loan bank. This
Oh,
isn't
that's
FTX.
crazy.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is happening in our lifetime. There's people going up there
2 million.
right now to get their money, or they're trying to. They do this on Friday. You know, the FDIC, they'll
Always.
move
That's
in
how they do
and
it.
they'll set
Yeah.
up shop. They'll set
Yeah.
up shop real close. And then it's kind of like don't tell anybody, don't cause
Mm-hmm.
panic. We'll talk about
Right.
fear and panic in a minute, how important that is.
Yeah.
But, what take this back because you learned some really good lessons back in 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
You got the experience of a lifetime, I believe, because you were kind of right in the middle of it. So fill me in on what happens next.
Well, I mean, what we experience in '08 is there's always like a tipping point, and usually the first big bank is the tipping point. And what we should see in a rather rapid succession is three or four more, and then there will be probably larger players. Like in '08, it was Lehman Brothers and Bears and Stearns, and they were very large. I can't remember the actual market cap of each of those, but they were um, both of those companies were over 100 years old, I believe, at the time. And one suffered catastrophic failure and the other got bailed out for whatever reason arbitrarily by the government.
Right.
So I
I want
believe that this is probably the tip of the iceberg. And we're
this is
going to
the
watch,
beginning.
a couple more. Yep,
I hope it's
absolutely.
not news
But
every day. I really do because
that's what happened in '08. It was like almost one a week. Oh, here's another bank, and then it went from the banks to the lenders. So it was Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Penny Mac, and all these more government backed mortgage companies were falling fast, which seems counterintuitive to what should have happened. But
well, from what I've learned and I've kind of been studying on it, I figure probably what will happen is the FDIC will run in here and they will make sure everybody that has $250,000 in the bank gets their money. They're going to calm everybody down because the last thing they want
it's a run.
is fear and panic.
Yeah.
Maybe it might be, I'm kind of thinking this is something that they're pushing they're going to roll the glorious CBDC out. If you would have had your
That's
money
yeah.
in the CBDC, this would have
Yeah.
never happened.
Or
But
it'll be an exchange thing like, hey, your money's gone. Now we can give it back to you, but if we're going to give it, what we're going to do is we're going to give it back to you in CBDC because this is going to protect you from this ever happening again.
right. Yeah. And so uh that's one thing. And then I guess a bank failure is more than likely going to cause more bank failures. It's going to cause fear and panic. If they're not ready for the CBDC, if because I don't think they really got it together just yet.
I I think you're right.
So I'm kind of thinking they're gonna patch this up, say it's all good. If you got more than a million in, oh well, sorry, you shouldn't have had all your
Right.
money in one bank
Yeah.
to begin with. But there's a lady up there that brings to mind. There's a lady right now. She was a part of a startup. That bank did a lot of startups, and those are really going down right now.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, fortunately, I listened to my advisors, and I got several different banks. So I did have more than a million in this, but obviously she was very well off, and she's solvent. But she said a lot of people that she knew had all of their money in SVB,
Mm.
and now
Mm.
those people they're done. They'll get 250 of it. I mean
Yeah.
that's it's really sad to see that, guys. I'm
It's
telling you.
incredible. And you'll notice that more with the elderly. They're really big on having all their money in one spot for ease and so it's not complex. But the problem with that, and as a financial advisor, we always tell people if you are going to carry a lot of cash to stagger your deposits, and I prefer much more local. Like around here, we have Texas Heritage Bank. That's a smaller local bank. We have several smaller local banks that I have a little bit more confidence in rather than these big guys, that everything's virtual and virtual deposits and virtual withdrawals and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's we've got a bank here doing that now. It's kind of futuristic. You can't really get anybody if you need somebody. Uh,
It's crazy.
and we don't deal with them, but that's why.
Right. Yep,
Actually, I
that's
think
right.
we do. I think we actually do. We have 4 or 5 different banks. I can't remember. My wife takes care of most of that. But I was able to go up there with her the other day and talk to the bank manager and get some information about loans being down about 50%. And
Mm.
encourage.
Yeah,
I've
it's
been
huge.
encouraging people on the channel to go to your bank and visit with them. If you got a real relationship, you can do that. So, have a relationship with
Yeah.
your bank. If you don't have one, make one, because you're going to need one to take advantage of the real estate crash and all the car prices and all this stuff. Use their money if you can. Uh,
And one of the
it,
things I've
it's a good
recommended
deal.
is to ask your bank, like, hey, what's your take on central bank digital currency? Are you I mean, banks are going to be kind of be forced to participate in this, and I would like to get their feeling on what their thoughts are on it. And because we talk about on our channel parallel economy, parallel society, and you would think that some of these smaller local banks aren't going to want to be manipulated in the way that CBDC is going to kind of force them to comply with basically global politics, basically.
I did that. I went to the bank about a year and a half ago, and I sat down with the bank president or vice president, the biggest one we use. And I said, "Do you know anything about CBDCs?" He said he did not have a clue, didn't know what I was talking
Hmm.
about.
Hmm.
And I said, "Well, you might ought to learn about it because it's probably going to take your job,
Right.
you know?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, he kind of looked
True.
at me like I was crazy and was like, "Well, I'm just telling you the truth." And I told him it's a central bank digital currency. I walked him through it, and it's just like I was, when you're trying to tell somebody something and they're not trying to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the look I was getting, that deer in the headlights look. So, I have tried that, and I have not been successful getting any kind of information. Strange.
And that's a great point to make there, Chris. This is why we do what we do. This is why we push the information out. How in the world there is a possibility that this bank president or VP was being honest, right? And saying, hey, I don't know what central bank digital currency is. And that is fascinating to me because I mean, this is your business. This is what you do. And this is basically going to be the new backbone of what you do and how you do it. And you're completely unaware of the cataclysmic transformation that's taking place and the infrastructure that's being built right under your own feet and you're completely unaware of it. That's rather fascinating to me.
It is, but it's kind of like, okay, I was a welder for the first 20 years of my career, and or a little more. But I can't tell you exactly how that welding machine works. I
Good
just
point. I
use it.
got you.
I push the button, it cranks, and I use it. And I think that's what they're
Yeah,
doing,
that's a good point.
you know.
Yeah.
So that I think that's what's going on. They're just not
Hmm.
they're not paying attention. So you really have to kind of actually pay attention to what's going on around you. If and that's what our channels are about, you know. It's odd the people I run into that I know for sure they know what's up. You know, I know surely. You know, you're in the savings and loan business or whatever banking industry, and you don't
Right.
have a clue about CBDCs. It kind
Yeah,
of
it's
makes you
crazy,
wonder why
man.
I got my money here. You know?
Exactly. No, you're exactly right.
Well, so I guess what's going to happen, or what did happen today? This happened today. It's crazy. They set up shop, and they usually they even rent the hotel under a fake name, and they'll
Mm.
have loan advisors, you know, all their professional people to actually. It's kind of like a hostile takeover,
Yep. Yep. Hmm.
and come in and then they take over the bank. They look at the books. You know, they get everybody going again, and I guess pay the people their 250. And I don't know if they start liquidating things. I don't know how they do that, but it's not a hey, we're coming. Although some people did know, some people knew ahead of time this was going to happen. The higher ups in different companies, and were told to get your money out of the bank.
Now, here's what's really interesting, because in '08 they were able to blame this on mortgage-backed securities, speculative loans. They bundled and bundled and bundled, and it was derivative of derivative, right? And then the other thing that nobody talked about back then, right, was uh, credit default swaps, right? And what credit default swaps were is a 17 trillion dollar market inside of the market that the the common investor was completely unaware of. And I bumped into this guy. He called himself a bond trader. He was younger than me, and he was buying a custom home, and he wanted to put in a car stacker. I'm going to put 6 cars in this garage and all stuff. It was crazy. And I said, "Hey man, what do you do?" He's like, "Oh, I'm a bond trader." And then as I got talking to him more, I'm like, "Well, it doesn't sound like you trade bonds." He was like, "Oh, well, do you remember that thing, credit default swaps?" And I was aware of what happened. And I know at the time George Bush and the government, they shut it down. He was like, "Oh yeah, man." He was like, "Dude, that was a $17 trillion market. They only closed it for 2 weeks." And then he's like, all the big dogs that were playing in that market were like, "Yo, man, there's $17 trillion in here. You better open it back up." And they started doing it again. And so I'm really curious what's going to bleed out of this to say, what's causing this failure? What's doing it? I mean, what's the antithesis of this? What's making this happen?
Bad loans,
Yeah.
economy slowing down. You know, we've got to take the medicine. We've got to, you know, we got to suffer through the hangover. You just can't keep, you know,
Can't
it's
keep
like you
borrowing.
said before in we just did another video, and there's corrections, right? Nothing goes up
Yep.
forever.
Exactly.
Markets get overheated and it corrects. Market
Yep.
gets overheated and it corrects. Well, the market got overheated and they corrected it with stimulus and it made it keep doing like this.
Yep.
Now the hangover is going to be much worse. We got some serious detox to go through if it
Yeah.
doesn't kill it,
Right.
you know?
Exactly. And what happens is when you kill a quasi free market, it basically has to go what, communist, socialist, fascist. It's got to go a different direction, right? Because that's the only way that it's going to be able to quote unquote sustain itself.
Well, and that's where your parallel economy comes in. You
Right.
speak of
Yeah.
that's and that's I just don't see how that's everything they're setting up now is saying that's not going to work that well. All this facial recognition, you know, they can analyze your face from 50 meters and hook you up to everything you've searched, everything you liked
Yeah.
on your phone, everything you've given to, everything. Your social credit score will pop on top of your head as soon as they hit your with
Hmm.
the algorithms, and then they can, you know, it's going to be hard to transact in that kind of economy. It's the beast
It,
system, really.
yeah, it's going to be almost impossible to transact.
And you've got crypto and gold and silver, and then you've got this CBDC, which I'm thinking we're all going to have to take part of. We're all going to have to use it, just like we use this
Paper
fiat
money. Yeah, that's
evil,
right. You're right.
unconstitutional paper they circulate.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna, we're if you think in crypto is a scam and all these things, or gold and silver is just a rock, it's actually a metal. Warren Buffett's a moron, but um, you know, it just gives those things a lot of validity to me, and it doesn't. I don't know another way around it. What else do? You just keep playing their game, or do you take some kind of hedge?
Right. And that, my hedge was our food 401k. We started planning about 6 years ago, and I wanted to develop the infrastructure. And I never planted or grown anything. I certainly didn't have a green thumb. And that was our whole premise of I got out of the market in '08, and I'm like, we're not going back in. We had always done well in real estate. I'm like, we're going to buy real stuff. We're going to buy a home. We'll buy more dirt. We bought cows. We bought more dirt. We planted about 400 fruit trees. Now we have a greenhouse and a garden, and that's all in preparation for real goods. Like, and if COVID has taught us anything with weak supply chains, like we have to prepare, and there's been prepper channels and prepper magazines and prepper websites, and there's been this other side of the coin where, oh, these people are just doom and gloom and they're waiting for the apocalypse, and then there's like the show Doomsday Prepper that kind of mocked the whole thing. But in reality, we're finally seeing kind of like the fruition of why all this stuff. And really, what I say on my channel all the time is observe the masses and do the opposite. And
That's
people are
so
like, yeah,
true.
but if
That's a
you're
good saying. That's
yeah,
a
if you're
perfect.
not,
That's
what
perfect.
if you're not investing in the stock market, what about your retirement? Well, I mean, these are all relative terms, right? But if I'm growing my food and, one, if I'm growing fruit, right, it's inflation proof. So I already have a natural inflation hedge and it's inflation proof. And then now I have a potential barter of a currently expensive item as well and a highly desirable item that may or may not be readily available. So there's so much we really have to think differently than we've ever thought before. And that's where this parallel economy, parallel society, and we're going to really, we cannot use the same mindset that build this gigantic balloon that's going to pop. We can't use that to solve the problem.
When you said observe the masses and do the opposite, I say that all the time, but I actually use neighbors, and not my neighbors, but you can pretty much look at everybody that's got new cars, new house,
Yeah.
new everything you can imagine. They're
Bob and
mortgaged to
Tom.
the hilt. They've got a house this much for that they can pay for, and everybody's got a new car. Do
Yeah.
the opposite of that.
That's right.
It's really that simple. Uh,
Yep. That's
don't
it.
don't get in bad debt, and it's about 2%. I figure there's about 2% of everybody is the ones that are paying attention and kind of know what's up. They're holding precious
Yep.
metals.
I
They're
think you're
holding
right.
a good pile of cash. They're waiting for, they're just waiting for whatever comes. They're as prepared as you can be. I don't think anybody's.
Sure. Yep. Exactly.
I really like your food 401k thing. That is a really cool because that is something you can touch. It's real. You need it to live, and you can sell it to live on. It makes a
Yep.
lot of sense to me. Um,
Yep. Yeah. And I don't know why more people. Well, I think we are seeing it. We're seeing more people get involved in their own food and are concerned about where their food comes from. So more and more people are developing that mindset of growing their own food and knowing where it comes from. So that's exciting. That's part of this parallel society, I think.
well, we're going to do the parallel society. I think it's going to be really it's going to be hard with all the CBDCs and digital stuff and cameras and paying your taxes,
Hmm.
and all these things that are coming. But this is how 60 years of prosperity, global
Yep. You're right.
prosperity led by the United States of America. This is
Yep.
how I think it ends. We're entering something that nobody has ever really experienced.
Yep.
That's the Great Depression, yeah, but there's not many of those guys left.
Sure.
My grandfather remembers it really well. He's 94.
Hmm.
But after that, it's been by the dip. It's been
Yep.
it only goes up. Buy a house because
Yep.
it only goes up. And I
Buy,
just don't
buy,
think,
buy, leverage, leverage, leverage. Yep.
and that's why we're in uh this thing that we've all been fortunate enough to, the most blessed people on the planet, with the reserve
Yeah.
currency. We're the world reserve currency, man. It's like we've been screwing
Yeah.
the world over for a long time. And you don't get to do that forever. People always think it's always going
No.
to be this way, Chris. The dollar is always going to be here. Well, yeah, maybe so. We're just going to call it the CBDC. It'll be different. Nothing stays the same and
Right.
nothing goes up forever. And I think as these banks fail, and as they give these big pushes towards a digital currency, and I'm hoping the people watching are doing a food 401k. I really like that saying. I'm gonna start pushing that. That's a cool idea, and I really like it. But if you got
You
all
know
your
what?
money,
Nobody, you know what? I haven't heard anybody talk about in respect to CBDC is how that, you know, once we're not the world reserve currency, and whether it's a BRICS deal or whatever, or some kind of gold backed yuan, or however it flops, how's that going to affect this whole central bank deal? And that's a really big factor that I haven't heard, and I don't even know if we could know how that would factor into all that. But that's obviously is going to affect us, and it's going to affect that whole system. However this um change of power, or however it goes down, I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, it's happened every time in history, and it's going to happen again.
Ray Dalio did I can't remember the name of the video. It was really good and well put together, and he was talking about superpowers and how one will go up and then another one will take over, and there's usually a war in between,
Mm-hmm.
and we're starting to see a Cold War between, China and the BRICS system, with
Yep.
currency. We're weaponizing the SWIFT system, an old, worn out,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
outdated, and they're tired of using it anyway. So, Europe is buying Russian oil. I'm sorry, China is buying Europe's portion of Russian oil. They're doing business outside the U.S. dollar, which is
Yep.
humongous news. The petrodollar is what's holding this thing together.
Sure.
It
Yep.
always has since
Yep.
Henry Kissinger went over there and set that up with the Saudi king.
That's right. Yeah.
But you know, it, I just don't. I don't know how a gold backed digital yuan. It seems logical to me that you know China's been hoarding gold. It was like 400 tons last year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild. They won't let any gold out of their country.
Yeah. No.
They will only they encourage their people to hold gold. They've got the Shanghai Exchange, the bullion exchange, that started receiving 10% of the global gold, and
Mm-hmm.
India just started one a few months back, maybe it was a year ago. It was a bullion exchange bank there, and it's like they're starting their own financial infrastructure
Yep.
around what we've already got. And
Yeah.
anybody that can't see that, I mean, don't take my word for it. Just check out BRICS
Yeah.
and the dollar, de-dollarizing, and
Yeah.
check that out. And I think it's a global thing that's gonna. who knows what it's going to usher in, TD? I mean, who knows? CBDC, yeah, maybe, but I didn't know our government was that good. I didn't know they could pull something. See, it seems like they subcontract everything, right?
Well, yeah, yeah, exactly. They subcontract everything, and when it's convenient, that oh well, we're just incompetent politicians. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, right.
you can't really blame us. We're incompetent. I mean, it's a political thing. It's like, wow. Well, you should stop taking all of our money in taxes.
Right. So uh, I was kind of thinking, why wouldn't they take advantage of the crypto system that we already have?
Right. Why not take? Hey, why not take? You want to print money like a drunken sailor? Buy gold with it, right? You're literally you can convert that fiat to reality, right? And why wouldn't you do that? It just to me, it just shows that what their intention is, it's to collapse the system.
Right. I don't know. Something in my gut says they're going to use something that's already out there, already created. And I don't know what it is. I wish I did. A lot of people think it's
Right. Me
XRP and
too.
this other
Right.
stuff. But
Ripple.
we don't know, but I just kind of figured they'd sub it out and say, "Oh, hey, well, we're going to use this because everybody likes it, and we got a bunch of it." I don't know. I don't know
Mhm.
exactly how it's going to work, but I did see a funny picture the other day. It was like the United States was throwing gold over the fence, and other countries were throwing money, and it was like, oh, it seemed like logical.
Yeah.
Well, PD, I appreciate you coming on. We're going to watch these banks and the correlation between the push, banks failing, and the push to CBDCs.
Yeah.
We're going to start seeing uh, cars, more repos. And that's going to
Yeah.
be part of this. You got all those loans going belly up, and there's going to be deals on cars in the future, uh,
And
and
you'll be able to
houses too.
watch it if you live in a neighborhood. You'll be able to watch it. You'll start watching the realtor. We've been in a very hot real estate market for an extended period of time, 3 or 4 years now. But you're going to start seeing these real estate signs go up side by side. First you'll see the realtor signs on the street. You'd be like, wow, there's like five, and then you'll see the foreclosure signs, and yeah, and it'll happen, and it'll happen pretty fast. It'll happen probably within 8 to 12 months.
And you can
And that, I
probably
mean,
do
that's what we
this
experienced in '08.
right, and you can to try to put it in perspective because it's hard to see because you're in it, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
we're kind of right in the middle of it. So the next time you pass a for sale sign on your street, let's say you go one way every day, a long ways, hit your mile button, reset your trip, and see when the next one is. And the next
Yeah.
time,
Great.
do it again, and you'll start noticing there's more and more because it's easy just to drive by and say, oh, there seems like there's one or two more, but start
Mm-hmm.
noticing how many there actually is because there's going to be more and more popping up around you close, and that might be. I've not thought about that. It might be a good way to try to hone in on a rental property, a whole
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood
Yeah.
or something.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best to take advantage of it because
Great.
we're going to have to.
Yep.
Somebody's got to
That's
come
right.
in and buy it
Somebody's
all.
got
We
to do
can't
it.
let
You're
BlackRock
right.
buy it all.
No, you're absolutely right. And in our family, we have really changed our talking about observing the masses and do the opposite. We've changed our entire paradigm when it comes to familial wealth. And we have how many kids do we have? We have 6 kids, and we've talked about it as a family. All of my boys, my 3 older boys, are entrepreneurial, and we've started different businesses. And they have a sawmill, and they have a YouTube channel, and we have a website, and we've talked about developing family assets. So, like our first rental property, we're going to purchase as a family, and the boys are going to fix it up. I'm going to purchase it. They're going to put in their sweat equity, and that's going to be a family rental property. That's a family asset. We're going to hold it probably in an LLC, in a family LLC, but that's going to be everyone's asset. And I believe that this is part of changing the paradigm of what is, because historically, that's the way families did it. That's the way families accumulated wealth, and Asian families that come to America, they do it communally. They come together, they'll buy one house, they all live in it, they all save together, and then that's how they expand. And I believe that if we're going to take advantage and be able to take advantage of opportunities that are going to present themselves, I think as families, we're going to have to come back together and work together and pool our resources. And I believe, that's something that we're really convinced of that we're going to implement.
Indian families do that as well. The Hindu Indians. I
Yep.
lived with 7 of them in a 2-bedroom apartment one time for about 2 weeks, and I got to learn a lot. We all slept on the
Yeah.
floor. 7. Yeah, it was wild. But I got to tell you, I was down to my last $500, and
Wow.
and I got a job at a shipyard. It's the worst job I ever had. But you're right. They traveled around in a group and they were tight. And it seemed like they would help each other. They weren't really family; they were just working together. But I could tell,
Mhm.
you see them they own these gas stations, and
Yeah.
they'll all kind of work at it. All of them
Yeah.
will run, and then all of a sudden they own the next one right down
Yeah.
the road. It's like, hey, I just saw you down there.
Yeah.
So you're
You're right.
right. That's a really good point. Well, TD, I appreciate you coming on. And guys, we're gonna
Thanks
keep
for having
watching
me.
this. Absolutely, we'll keep watching this, and we'll be doing more interviews because I like being around like-minded people. Thanks for coming on, TD.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. Appreciate y'all.
Later, guys.
See y'all.